Now we need to get you to Norfolk. This is outside of Naval Station Norfolk, where the mother of Angelina Resendiz, a sailor who was found dead off base, another sailor arrested and now charged in connection to her death. The mother of Angelina Resendiz is now pushing for change in the Navy and in the military. She is being joined by advocates there outside of Naval Station Norfolk as they are pushing for an investigation independently into what happened to her daughter and the broader failures that allowed it to happen. So we're going to let you listen in on this live look at their press conference.
She was murdered at this military base right behind me, on a base that represents structure, discipline, and duty. On a base where service members are supposed to be protected, on a base where leadership carries a responsibility not only to a mission and readiness, but to a human life. We stand here today because the consequences of inaction are not abstract. They are human. They are daughters who never come home, families who live with permanent loss. The consequences are service members who question whether their safety is truly a priority. This press conference is about responsibility, institutional responsibility, command responsibility. When warning signs are missed, concern dismissed, policies fail, and oversight breaks down. It fails the very people it is meant to protect. Those who protect us. In this case, the lack of preventable action did more than create vulnerability. It created opportunity. Opportunity for a violent serial offender, a predator that was left to move around freely within a system that should have stopped him. A serial offender was transferred and free to exist within the spaces meant to be secure, left free to choose his next prey. While those responsible for safeguarding others simply did not do that. The United States military asked extraordinarily commitment from those who serve. It demands loyalty, discipline, and sacrifice. In return, it carries an unbreakable obligation, and that is to safeguard the lives of its service members. Transparency is not optional. We are here to ensure that Angelina Resendiz is not reduced to a report, a story, or a closed case. We are here to ensure that her life and her loss compels change, permanent change. Because when the system fails and no one answers for it, failure becomes a precedent. Today, we will hear from Family's Legal Counsel, Attorney Marshall Griffin. We will hear from Mrs. Esmeralda Castle, Angelina's mother, whose strength and courage inspire us all to demand justice louder and louder every day. I will speak again from the perspective of our committee, the Military and Veterans Affairs, and the rest of military veterans and survivors for military sexual assault and trauma. Since the tragedy of Vanessa Guillen in Fort Hood, Texas, LULAC has been pursuing this and asking for accountability and for permanent change that prevents this from happening again, but we continue to see it. We will also take limited questions at the end, and that we ask that all the questions remain respectful, of course, and focus on the facts. It is now my honor to introduce Attorney Marshall Griffin.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I can just give you a quick update on the way forward. So as you all know, the trial has been scheduled for June. To my knowledge, that has not changed. There was a motions hearing in December, and that went off as scheduled. The next hearing is scheduled for March 5th. Motions were due for that hearing on the 18th, so earlier this week. Our role in the case is not one that gives us a lot of access to the substance of the case, so I'm not told about the substance of those motions or if any were even filed. But I would expect that motions hearing, if any motions were filed, those motions will be litigated on the 5th. That's pretty much the state of trial, but it's on schedule right now and still tracking for June. And as far as we can tell, the parties are preparing for trial.
Attorney, it's scheduled for multiple weeks. Do you expect it to last that long?
So it's hard to say. I mean, a trial, this is an extremely complex trial with a ton of evidence that we saw at the Article 32 hearing. That is a long trial objectively. 4 weeks is what it's scheduled for right now, but that's not, I don't think, unreasonable given the nature of the charges and the number of victims, frankly. There's a lot to do. I'll turn it back over, and if there's any questions at the end, I'd be happy to answer those.
Hi. Happy New Day. Thank you for coming. So, why are we here? I'm here to ask for an independent investigation into, what happened to Angie, right? We have an individual that we've learned at the Article 32 hearing who harmed several women before he reached Angie. After, and then once he did, all the things that happened in between, the not reporting her missing. We have her petty chief who said he saw her, but didn't do anything when he did see her. That there needs to be some accountability for that. We have statements made by the Secretary of the Navy, information that he was given, and statements that he gave to the public stating that he was told that Angie was locked out of her room. She was locked out of her room. She sent a text message to her friend, and when her friend came to help her out, she wasn't there. And we all know that's not true. So what's happening? Why would that information be given to the Secretary of the Navy? I think it's just not being taken serious. I think that they just want us to go away, that they're waiting for this to go away, that, yeah, we have someone in jail, but that's not it. We're not done yet, because if nothing changes, we're gonna have another Angie. And that cannot happen. So we need Congress to act. We need Congress to, have a committee or an inspector general, a serious, very serious investigation into what is going on and why this is not being taken. Why? Yeah, it's like they don't care. It's like they don't care, and we want justice, right? We want accountability. We want transparency. We want this to stop. We want our military to be what the people believe it to be, right? Safe. not just safe, or just in the world, you know, a force of good, a force of safety, a force of security. When we think of our military, we want to believe that they're the highest standard that our country could ever be. And that's why we're here. That's why I'm here today.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I turned off. Who broke it? The ancestors. I think we broke it. Sorry. I think I'm just gonna have to speak really loud. So, again, today we stand in solidarity with Esmeralda and her family. We are seeking the truth for the community and accountability and justice for Angelina. Angelina was more than a sailor, more than a service member. She was a daughter, she was a sister in arms for all of us. And a young woman who answered the call to serve this nation. And when a service member raises their right hand, our country assumes a solemn responsibility, not only for mission readiness, but for their safety, dignity, and protection. Their responsibility must never fail them. Our presence here today centers on two clear requests. First, we are calling for an independent investigation into Angelina's death. Military families and the American public must have confidence that investigations are conducted transparently and free from real or perceived conflicts of interest. Secondly, we are calling for the establishment of an independent oversight committee, similar to the commission created following the tragic death of Specialist Vanessa Guillen. That commission exposed systemic failures and led to meaningful reform. Angelina's case deserves the same level of independent review and accountability, nothing less. We must also ask the questions that families and service members deserve answers to. For example, were proper procedures followed when Angelina was reported missing? Do clear accountability protocols even exist? And how are they reported when sailors cannot be located? We all have asked ourselves that question. Who had the responsibility to act? Who could have prevented this tragedy? And what failures occurred along the way? And most importantly, what will the Navy do to ensure that this doesn't happen again? or another military family is seen again suffering like Esmeralda and Vanessa Guillen's mother and family have suffered throughout these years. Accountability and readiness are not competing priorities. They are inseparable. To Esme and her family, LULAC stands with you. All the veterans and the community stands with you. And to every military family and to every committee member and community member from this community who was also harmed, we all stand with you. And this press conference is not just for Angelina. It's for everybody here. We continue and we will continue to advocate for transparency, for an independent oversight, and for justice, because honoring service means demanding accountability. And Angelina requires nothing less. Thank you. And now we have time for questions.
Maybe this might work. Can you turn on your car?
But why did LULAC pick this day for this press conference? What was the spark that led to
There was the spark for today's is that we have a legislative conference starting on Monday. And our plan is to follow this conference with our meetings up in DC. We are scheduled to meet with members of Congress starting on Monday, which we will follow, demanding the same things that we are demanding here today. Accountability and transparency. We will meet with them and also ask them to the same questions that we're asking here today. We have not really gotten any more further with the legislative aspect, and that's what we will do.
Also, recently here locally, there was the death of Luna Guerra, and it was said that her husband, who was involved in the Navy. Have you guys heard of that case, or do you have any reaction to that case also happening locally here, the same place that Angelina was?
We have here locally heard about that, and that is more of a reason as to why we are pushing more harder, right? Because it continues to happen. And this is even more of a signal as to why we need to implement some measures to prevent this from continuing to happen.
And I know that you guys have written Congress a letter back in October, and then just recently you had to push again to send that letter. Have you heard any response back from Congress for that letter?
No, we have not. Yeah.
Do you have any folks in Congress that you're specifically meeting with on Monday? Like any local members? Are you able to say who you're going to be meeting with this? Or
the schedule is still being prepared as we speak, so we will probably learn more about that probably on Saturday night or Sunday even. Yeah.
you're focusing on the two armed services committees?
Yes, we are.
If you could ask the mom, I mean, what level of contact have you had from the Navy, and how recently, and what have they told you?
Nothing. I've not had any contact, and they have not said anything. The only response that we received were the letters that were sent back to the members of Congress asking questions for us. And like I said, the answers, they conflict. They conflict with what we heard at the hearing. And so there needs to be an investigation. Something is not right here. Something is either not being taken seriously, right? They don't care, or what's going on. We want to know. I'm not going to start speculating and make claims and accuse, but there needs to be more done than what has been done already.
you were saying almost these exact same words while Angelina was still missing, like that very first week after she was reported missing. Did you ever think that 9 months later, essentially, you'd still be in this place having questions like this?
I'm not going to say I'm surprised, right? I hope for the best. We want what's right. But it is what it is. This is a pattern that we see in our country, right? In leadership, this isn't going to go away. We're going to get answers.
How are you and your family doing in the meantime?
I mean, we're here, right? And we keep going forward, and we understand who we are. We are more than the bodies that stand here. We are, we're children of God, right? And in my home, we understand that completely. But what's heartbreaking is how this happened, and the lack of I can't say empathy, right? Care. I think that's really what it is. Like, they just don't care. Because if they did, I think that we'd be done with this already.
Back in September, the Article 32 hearing, we asked you if the other offenses that Mr. Copeland is accused of, you had any prior knowledge prior to that day in September. You said no. How would that have changed things, and how would that have changed how you advised your daughter? How would your daughter have changed her behavior had you known about those things?
Before she joined the military?
Yeah,
I tried to buy her a car and asked her not to join. I was like, I'll get you an apartment, I'll buy you a car, you go to school, you go to college, but this is what she wanted to do. And so we supported her with that. And yes, like knowing that harm has happened, right? All these women right here have been harmed by service members. In the military, this is across branches. This isn't just one branch. This is every branch. And it continues to happen. And if she was here now, I'd do more, to keep her from joining, right? But here we are. And so what can we do now is to prevent this from happening again. That's all we can do now, is to stop this from happening. That parents, mothers, families don't have to do this, don't have to suffer, don't have to question. And there's a lot that happens, and a lot of people don't know how to speak up and how to, ask questions. They just accept what is happening. I can't accept what is happening. It is wrong, and it needs to stop. This is injustice, and I want justice. She deserves it. All these women here deserve it. Every service member, whoever's been harmed, by negligence because of a command, they deserve justice.
The GAO just put out a report saying that the services have to standardize how they approach missing troops, like what they do to seek them out. What do you think is missing from the Navy's process right now?
I'm not sure what's missing from the Navy's process. I mean, when her friends and when I said that she was missing, it wasn't taken seriously. They wanted to wait till she didn't show up to work. And so instead of acting in the moment when the concern was brought to them, they chose to ignore it. In fact, they never reported her missing. And they've admitted it in a document that they've given to, Congress, to the committee. Like, no, we didn't report her missing. Someone else did, and that was good enough. That's not good enough. That is not good enough. And so something needs to be done. I don't know. That's why we need an independent investigation. And, then we'll take it from there, right? Any other questions? Yes, sir. We'll march those halls again and go into everybody's office and give them the update of everything that we've learned from the Article 32 hearing. The first time I met the members of Congress, I knew nothing. And everything was just, speculative. Now we know. Now we know that there was 4 women before us. Now we know that someone did see her and did nothing about it. It was someone who should have protected her. Now we know that her command did not report her missing. And now we know that there were several groups, right? You have NCIS, you have the Truman Command, you have the Williams Command, you have the NCIS that's here on this base. You have several serious organizations that could have stopped this. They could have. This is absolutely preventable, if not foreseeable. I mean, any reasonable person could see that something bad was already happening. There's something worse. It could happen, and it did. And so that's what we would be talking about. Hey, this is what happened. This is what we learned, and these are the facts. But we need independent investigation and new statute after this. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Really appreciate it.
Sorry for the mic problems. Okay, guys, look at that.
You were just listening to Esmeralda Castle, the mother of Angelina Resendiz, who was found dead outside of Naval Station Norfolk, a few minutes away in Norfolk in a wooded area. This after she was missing for nearly 2 weeks, this last year in May. And found in the early portions of June. What you've seen there is the mother of that slain sailor now calling for a special investigation into her death. Her suspected killer is a fellow sailor, Jeremiah Copeland. We've learned through recent hearings that investigations had already been launched into Copeland's behavior after complaints about his behavior towards other women on and off base. Castle, as you heard from them saying, that they want this independent investigation not only into the moments that led up to her daughter's death, but also into the actions taken or not taken by Navy officials. She has repeatedly called into question whether Navy officials have done enough and acted soon enough to help save her daughter. But this is bigger than what has happened in this particular case, according to Castle. She says that this is about accountability, about protecting service members. It's about making sure no other family walks this road. Today, you heard she was joined by representatives of LULAC, that is the League of United Latin American Citizens. They were just there outside of Naval Station Norfolk. They're going to go to Washington, D.C. next week in the early portions of the week to speak with congressional leaders about what they want to see done. She's also partnered with federal lawmakers before all of this. She's been pushing for legislation that's aimed at making the military report how many service members were found dead over the last 10 years after initially being reported AWOL. Castle is doing a lot right now. You heard her also being asked about whether or not she was still running for elected office. Well, since this tragedy, she did announce that she was going to be running in her home state of Texas, where she resides and where Angelina Resendiz also was from. Saying that she was running to hold people accountable, particularly what she sees in cases like this for her daughter. She's running for the Texas House seat as a Democrat, and she actually has a primary coming up on March 3rd. This was a case that we have followed very, very, very closely. I was actually the first reporter in the market to sit down with Esmeralda that weekend, in which the search had not yet truly began for her daughter, but she came up and said that something was wrong. She had been reported missing, and at that point it had already been a few days when we were able to speak, and you heard a reporter, I can't tell you who that was, that asked her, but they said some of the things you're saying now are the things we heard you say even when she was still missing. And that's exactly right. She has had questions and concerns throughout this process, more so about what the process is, what's the protocol for the Navy, and how could it have changed, how could it have been different in this particular case. Just want to go through a few other facts when it comes to this. Some of the things that we learned outside of court. There was a hearing at the end of last year. A few things that we learned in that. You heard the attorney there for the family saying that a trial date has been set for June, but their next hearing is going to be on March 5th. In previous hearings, though, we heard new details that were quite disturbing, saying that charging documents, this is from September, which would have been the last time, I believe, that we were able to see her mother in person here. Charging documents showed that it included charges against Jeremiah Copeland of sexual assault and misconduct, involving at least 3 other victims going back to July of 2024. Also, domestic violence and wrongful broadcast and distribution of intimate visual images, which we often commonly refer to as revenge porn. The documents that were released at that time back in September redacted the names of all of the victims, but the charges matching the description of this case, the Resendiz case, include premeditated murder, making false statements, and obstruction of justice. So those are some of the things that we heard in this point. Prosecutors also gave us a timeline leading up to that murder. And I just kind of want to walk you through some of the things as we go back through the notes of all of that. It was the evening of May 28 that prosecutors say that Resendiz met up with Copeland at his barracks. That night, they say one of her friends got a text that was concerning from her. And then in the morning, around 2:15, they say that Resendiz made a panicked call to a male friend saying that she needed to be picked up. The phone was then handed to Copeland, who claimed that Resendiz was fine. But Resendiz continued to plead in the background to be picked up. That friend reportedly said that he would arrive to get her within the next 10 minutes, but when he got there, he was unable to find her. The counsel there, trial counsel, said that health data taken from Resendiz's Apple Watch indicated that her heart was elevated around 128 BPM and then shot up to 130 at around 3 o'clock in the morning, so about 45 minutes later. And then her phone died just before 5 o'clock in the morning on the 29th. Going back through that later that morning, it's when prosecutors say that Copeland was seen by his roommates undressed in his room with a woman in his bed, wrapped in a blanket with her feet sticking out, and Copeland lying with his head on her stomach. June 1st, they say Copeland then allegedly asked to borrow his friend's Jeep and was seen driving down Hampton Boulevard in Norfolk. Cell phone data reportedly showed that he used his phone to look up a wooded area, pinned it, turned his phone into airplane mode, drove to the neighborhood where the pin was, and then walked out of that wooded area back into his car, and then drove to a restaurant before returning back to the barracks. It's in that area where the trial counsel say that the body of Resendiz was found in a black duffel bag that had been pinned. Again, that location pinned on Copeland's phone, according to prosecutors in this. They also say that traces of Resendiz's blood were found in the stairwell of Copeland's barracks, in his closet, and in a duffel bag wheel marks that were dragged from Copeland's room and through the common space. So those were things from the prosecution. The evidence that they say that is a part of all of this, that cell phone, by the way, we do know is a key portion of all of this. At another hearing, they were looking through what evidence they can use, and that phone that was searched and seized is expected to be a very key part of this entire investigation. And so it's certainly a case that brings a lot of questions in terms of exactly pinning what happened here, if there was anything that could have prevented what took place. Certainly, Esmeralda Castle believes so. But what we have heard from Navy officials is that there was no breach of protocol, that the protocol for what happened went according to how it was to happen. And so, that I think is where the questions are coming and the push are coming from Angelina's mother and from the advocates that you hear from LULAC. Are there ways in which the protocols can and need to change, and what are they, and what does that look like? So this case has been one that has been huge here in not only Norfolk but across the country, as if this does catch the support of many other congressmen, people who are in our nation's capital, who knows? It could have a larger impact on how military operations go when it comes to missing individuals. That is certainly what they are hoping for at this time. So we just heard from them, the mother of Angelina Resendiz and other advocates. And they are, Sarah, we heard them multiple times referring to, and I do believe there were photographs behind them. It wasn't as clear for me. But referring to other cases where there have been active service members who have been harmed by other active service members on base, including the case of Vanessa Guillen. And you may be very familiar with that case, who was found dead on Fort Hood back in 2020. And another service member being found responsible for that after she was missing around the same time of year that Angelina Resendiz went missing, but 5 years earlier, April of 2020, her remains found at the end of June of that year. They are saying that there are similarities between the cases and again, trying to push for change in ways in which service members who go missing can expedite the process, and maybe there's some things that can be changed. In that particular case for Guillen, again, a U.S. Army soldier, she was sexually harassed prior to being murdered in that case, and you always just wonder if this case with the accused having other complaints against him. One of the questions that Esmeralda Castle, the mother of Angelina Resendiz, has had since learning of that information in court at the end of last year is if that information, if there's any way they could have known anything prior to all of this. And you heard someone ask, with the information now, what would you have told your daughter prior to getting into the military? So we just heard from them. I'm sure we're going to have much more from that press conference. Our reporters there, Madison Schlegel, who has also been covering this case from the beginning here at 13 News Now. She's going to have so much more coming up, I believe, at 13 News Now at noon, and then her later reports throughout the day. So you're going to want to stick with us for that as this all unfolds. And how about that? Esmeralda Castle running for State House in Texas in a bit of a crowded Democratic field there in a district that is Republican controlled. So several things that she would have to overcome in that case in order to win. But if she were to, she said she is bringing this message of accountability to that role if she were to win there in Texas.